95% of Dolphins fans want Mike McDaniel to be fired. The question is, though, when will he be canned? Not if. Well, on today's show, we're going to talk about that because I believe this is the last week for Mike McDaniel if they lose on Sunday to the Los Angeles Chargers. And it all stems from something Mike McDaniel said on Monday's press conference after he had a meeting with Stephen Ross. We know the writing is on the wall. The fans want Mike McDaniel fired. The fans want Chris Grier fired. But I do believe we actually might see it happen next Monday if the Dolphins lose at home to the Chargers, where they are currently 4.5-point underdogs, which means on a neutral site game, it would be about a 7.5-point spread. But this is the quote I'm talking about here. Mike McDaniel said that when he met with Stephen Ross, he was really frustrated, just like I was. We talked about the challenge ahead to get ready for the Chargers, and that was really the extent of it. Well, if you remember and have been watching the show for the beginning of the season, we talked about a quote from McDaniel about his meeting with Stephen Ross after the Week 2 defeat to the New England Patriots. The tone is so much different just 3 weeks ago. And also, if you read between the lines, have we ever really heard Mike McDaniel mention frustration from Stephen Ross? No, you haven't. So, to me, it feels like we may be reaching the boiling point here with Mike McDaniel. More coming up here. But when they get canned, oh, it'll be a glorious day. We will be live on the channel, so subscribe and make sure you have your notifications turned on. 13.7% of you do. Make sure it's clicked to all, not just personalized, so you never miss any live show we have or video, because we're bringing you 3 lives a week and 2 videos every day. I mentioned the tone and how different it was just a couple weeks ago. Well, let's take a stroll back just 3 weeks to Mike McDaniel on his meeting with Stephen Ross, which was September 15th. So about 3.5, 4 weeks ago. We talked about the game after the game. In preparation week for Buffalo, in step with what I talked to the team about, we felt we could win the game and didn't. We talked about the short week in Buffalo. Well, to see the subtle tones, like Ross talked to him about the game. Tough game, Mike. Short week against Buffalo. You going to be ready? Yeah. After this one, it feels like it's more like, how did we lose that game, Mike? We're playing the Panthers. We're up 17-0 after 16 minutes. How do we lose that game? To a second-year coach, Dave Canales, and third-year quarterback, Bryce Young, who stinks. Like, I just feel like the tones in those meetings were significantly different. Like, I feel like this may have been the breaking point, the caving point for Stephen Ross. Because think about this as well. This is Mike McDaniel's 4th year in Miami as head coach. What is one thing that has been consistent for McDaniel all 3 years prior to this one? Well, 1, you made the playoffs in 2 years, but you beat the bad teams and you lost to the good teams. So the Miami Dolphins have been consistent. You beat who you beat and you should beat, but you lose to the good teams, which has always been frustrating, but you can live with winning records in playoff appearances. But now we saw this Dolphins team lose to a 1-3 Panthers team at the time, and it wasn't like it was a back-and-forth close game the entire 60 minutes. No, you went up 17-0 and then proceeded to get outscored 27-7 against a terrible organization in Carolina. Like, I think Mike McDaniel should already be canned. I said this on Sunday. I said it on Monday. Heck, I said it 3 weeks ago. But I feel as if Stephen Ross, based off that quote we saw McDaniel give about their potential meeting, may have finally come to the realization that he can't stand idly by. He may be giving Mike one last chance to save his job by defeating the Chargers at home, a team that he is not expected to beat based off how the seasons have progressed for both Los Angeles and Miami. So unless Mike McDaniel gets the upset win at home this week, I think he's gone. Are you with me? Is this the week Does Mike McDaniel get fired with a loss against the Los Angeles Chargers on Sunday? Type Y for yes or N for no. It is X-Men 3, The Last Stand. It is his last opportunity, folks. I'm telling you, we shouldn't even be here because if we're going to be honest, if the Dolphins just weren't a poorly coached football team, this season would be probably on live and well. Be 3-2. They should have beat New England at home. They should have beat Carolina. And they beat the Jets. So if we're going to be honest here, you can excuse the week 1 loss to the Colts because they look like a powerhouse, and you can excuse the loss in Buffalo. You could. You could justify that. But if you just took care of business of both of your home games and defeated the 1-3 Panthers, we would have a winning record right now, and Mike McDaniel probably wouldn't be on the hot seat. Hell, his seat probably wouldn't even be a little toasty. He'd be feeling pretty good because this team would be contending in a playoff spot if they were 3-2, because the Patriots are the 7th seed right now and they're 3-2. But unfortunately, he has been terrible this year. The team has been terrible, which is why he's forced to be into his last stand. And I'm not just saying this because I want it to be his last stand. There are murmurs around the league, and what is a famous line out there, folks? Where there is smoke, there is fire. Well, there's a lot of smoke out there. Tony Pauline, who maybe isn't the most credible, but does have sources, has 40,000 plus followers on Twitter. He reported the other day, when could Mike McDaniel be sent packing? The same sources who told me McDaniel was on thin ice after the week 1 loss to the Colts predict that Ross will wait 2 to 3 more games before deciding whether to pull the trigger on Mike McDaniel. The next 2 to 3 games, home against the Chargers, on the road against Cleveland, on the road against Atlanta. But I think they might not even let him get to Cleveland 2 weeks from now. Because I think if things go south in LA, or I should say in Miami against LA, that will do it. Why do I believe that? One, the Dolphins would fall to 1-5. And that would be as bad as it gets. With back-to-back embarrassing losses against the Panthers, and likely, I'm saying if it goes south, which means it's an embarrassing loss to the Chargers. Back-to-back. I also think it's a breaking point for Stephen Ross because how much he loves the head coach for the Chargers, Jim Harbaugh. He is a Michigan graduate and a massive donor to the NIL fund at Michigan. He loves Jim Harbaugh. He went even so far to say this 3 years ago before they hired Mike McDaniel. I am not going to be the person to take Jim Harbaugh from the University of Michigan. I hope he stays there. He's a great coach. We know what Stephen Ross wanted to do. He wanted to go get Sean Payton and Tom Brady. Fortunately, that didn't happen for Stephen Ross. So, Mike McDaniel it was. But the point I'm trying to make is he loves Jim Harbaugh. So the coach that he loves comes into Miami, embarrasses Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins, showcases Stephen Ross even more how incompetent McDaniel is in comparison to Harbaugh. Well, would that not be enough to trigger Stephen Ross to the point of, okay, I'm done? I feel like it could be, folks. If it goes poorly against the Chargers on Sunday, he might be out of here. Well, we are sponsored by Ethos. Have you or a friend experienced loss, which has you thinking about how to secure your family's financial future? With life insurance through Ethos, your family could be protected. Life insurance is a perfect way to make sure you're covered. Right now, you can get your free quote at ethos.com/NFL Daily. Ethos is an online platform that makes getting life insurance fast and easy to protect your family's future in minutes, not months. There's no complicated process. It's 100% online. No medical exam required. You just answer a few health questions. Some policies, as low as $2 a day, billed monthly. As of March 2025, Business Insider named Ethos the #1 no medical exam instant life insurance provider. Join the millions with Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos. Get your free quote at ethos.com/NFL Daily. That is ethos.com/NFL Daily. Application times may vary. Rates may vary. Links in the description and comments of today's video. I'm telling you, man, a blowout loss to the Chargers on Sunday, or another incompetent performance, which would make it, what, 3 or 4 on the year already? Mike McDaniel is finally being fired. And we have talked a lot about how Mike McDaniel might have a longer leash because Stephen Ross doesn't like to fire a ton of coaches midseason. But there is a lot of precedent of Stephen Ross willing to do that. I mean, just look back at 2015 when Joe Philbin was fired after a 1-3 start. Oh, Mike McDaniel's 1-4 and could be 1-5 with a loss this Sunday. I hate to keep beating the dead horse because it is a big if. And funny, we're playing if man Justin Herbert. But if the if man Herbert gets the win in Miami, that would be the first time he beats Tua, obviously connected at the hip between Dolphins fans due to that same draft class. I think that's going to be the breaking point. I really, really believe that. But I also want to make this abundantly clear. I want to make this as crystal clear as humanly possible. I want Mike McDaniel fired ASAP. But I am not putting all of the blame on Mike McDaniel. Chris Grier deserves, in my opinion, more blame and needs to be fired at the same time as McDaniel or borderline first. Like, seriously, if you're firing McDaniel on Monday after a loss, Chris Grier should be fired as well. I actually would sacrifice Mike McDaniel staying on as head coach to get Chris Grier fired right now. Because if we'll be honest here, is McDaniel a good coach that can win a Super Bowl? No, he is not. He's a brilliant offensive mind, and I think he'll be a great offensive coordinator somewhere else. That will always sting, but it's the truth of the matter. But Chris Grier needs to go because he has consistent misses in the draft. He gives extensions to older veterans, and they almost always backfire. I mean, Zach Sealers already looks like it's a backfire, and he was our best player last season. But extensions to Ramsey, extensions to Tyreek Hill, to Bradley Chubb, restructured contracts to make people happy all the time. Minkah Fitzpatrick got one after the trade this summer. Tua's contract extension. He lets players walk. It's just been unbelievable. And also, we've talked a lot about how this roster has had to go and should go into a rebuild. Well, you got to trade veterans at the deadline. Why would this man trade veterans at the deadline for the future if he knows he's not going to be here? And even if the interim GM you hire isn't here long term, they at least believe if they do a good job, they could keep their current position. There is no hope with Chris Grier that he will keep his position long term. So you need to fire him sooner than Mike McDaniel. More coming up here on Chris Grier's incompetence, but who deserves more blame, more at fault? Yesterday, we asked between these two and Stephen Ross. Let's boil it down to just these two. Who deserves more blame, Chris Grier or Mike McDaniel? Let me know your thoughts. Well, we talked about how many misses Chris Grier has had in the draft in his career. He has some good picks. I mean, we're not going to say he has no good picks, but it's been pretty rough. I mean, this draft class has the making of one of the worst in recent memory. And it's unfortunate because I was very optimistic. So it's hard for me to really sit up here and give him total blame because I liked most of the picks he made. Would I have taken Will Johnson over Kenneth Grant? Absolutely. I said that live. The conversation between Grant and Tyler Warren is certainly plausible. And then I would have taken Will Johnson again the second round over Jonas Savionaya. I mean, those two have been the worst in their position through the first 5 weeks of the year. But Jason Marshall Jr. doesn't look like anything special. He got hurt. Trader Jr., Gordon looks like a solid RB2. But, like, these guys don't look like they're going to be really that much impactful. I mean, and then you go just 1 year prior. I think he did make good 2 picks in the first 2 rounds. Chop, I think there's still good stuff in him, and he'll have a good career. Patrick Paul looks outstanding. But Jalen Wright was a healthy and active last week. Mohamed Kamara, you already see it, is not even wearing a Dolphins jersey anymore. Malik Washington looks fun, gadget player, specialist, but is he going to be a capable wide receiver? I don't know. I mean, 2 of these 7 players Miami drafted are already off the roster. Patrick Morris ain't with the Dolphins, and Mo Kamara is wearing a Bucs jersey. But the couple drafts before that are even worse. Yeah, they only had 4 picks due to a bunch of trades, but Cam Smith in round 2, he's no longer with the Dolphins. Devon Achane is a home run, obviously. Top 5 running back in football. But Elijah Higgins and Ryan Hayes, don't expect 6th and 7th round picks to be difference makers that often. But once again, no longer with the Dolphins. You look to the 2022 draft. First pick came in round 3. Channing Tyndall, bust, nothing. Eric Ezukama, never did anything. Cam Good still with the team, but doesn't play. Skylar Thompson, well, we know the adventures of Skylar Thompson. Point is, the last 4 years, the drafts haven't been that pretty. You've had a big hit in Devon Achane in the 3rd round, yes. And you believe that you have building blocks in Achane and Chop Robinson. Or, excuse me, Patrick Paul and Chop Robinson. But the rest of them, oh boy, it's ugly. And I mentioned a little bit earlier, the extensions for Chris Grier have been equally, if not more brutal. The Chubb, the Ramsey, the Tua, the Tyreek, the restructured contracts to give them more guaranteed money. It has just consistently put Miami in rough spots the last couple of years with their cap situation, their ability to really revamp the roster. It's been brutal. And then you just go on and on about the players that have walked. And most of that has been because of the extensions you have given, because you have not had enough money to re-sign the players you should re-sign. Robert Hunt, Andrew Van Ginkel, Deshaun Elliott, Rashad Jones. The list goes on and on. All right, I'll do it for this episode. Like I said, stay subscribed and make sure your notifications are turned on, because when they fire Mike McDaniel and Chris Grier, we're throwing a party, man. Like, I'm telling you, it might be more fun than Dolphins game days. I'm serious. So make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and don't miss a thing.